Our first question is how to buy a first computer. What I would recommend you doing is actually going to a retail outlet to kind of take a look at the different specs and different prices that they have on each one. Really what you want to look for in a computer are a couple of things. We have a processor, which is pretty much the essential brain of the computer, and then we have the memory, which is how many things a computer can do at one time. Kind of like how many things you can have out on your desk at one time before you actually can do the stuff on your desk. And then you have your hard drive, which is more or less the capacity, or like a filing cabinet, that you pull things out of and put it back in when you're done with it. So those are the primary things. And of course, you want to consider monitor size too. If you want to get a larger monitor or one with a higher refresh rate if you're doing gaming. So we'll tackle each one of those. First off is your monitor, or actually processor. The best and baddest processor would be the quad-core processors. There are two rivaling companies. There's Intel and AMD. Intel is by far probably the better one, only because that they spend a lot more money in research and development than AMD. So they stay a little bit ahead of the curve than AMD. However, AMD is a little bit more price conscious. So you kind of have to weigh out which ones that you want. Gigahertz and frontside bus and also level 2 cache are the three measurements there. Gigahertz is overall how fast the processor can think per second. And then you have, so the higher the number, the better. Then you have frontside buses, which is how fast the processor can get that information to the rest of the computer, kind of like the spinal cord to the rest of the body. And then you have the L2 cache, which is direct memory on board the processor. The more it has, the more space that processor has to think at one time. Memory is also the next most important thing, which is how many things the computer can do at one time. So the higher the number, the better. And also the frequency at which that memory runs is the better. The higher the number, the better. What I'd recommend is getting at least 2 gigabytes for Windows Vista. 4 would be the preferable one, so that your computer is not out of date so quickly. We have the hard drive, which is the capacity, the overall capacity, the storage space of the computer. A lot of people oftentimes confuse that with memory, and that's not the same thing. The capacity of the hard drive is measured in gigabytes. So the higher the capacity, obviously the more stuff you can put in the computer. To give you an idea, a single MP3 file is about 5 megabytes, and a gigabyte is 1,024 megabytes. So there's a lot of stuff you can put in on 1 gigabyte. So 250 to maybe 500, if you're doing a lot of things, would be where you'd want to kind of look at. For the monitor, you want to make sure that the refresh rate is fast enough for you. So the lower the number, the better. So this measured in milliseconds. A 3 millisecond refresh rate is much better than a 16-second millisecond refresh rate. For gaming, you also want to make sure you have a high refresh rate and contrast ratio, which is how many to one that you can discern different colors. So, for instance, there might be one that's 3,000 to 1, and then a more expensive monitor might be 10,000 to 1. So you want to kind of look at those things. And also, of course, the size are some of the things that you kind of want to look at in your first computer. Overall, I would say a couple of companies really compete per specification on the internet particularly. You have HP, Dell, and then if you go to a retail store like Best Buy, you'll see a lot of those things already pre-built, which of course you can't really put in the components that you want. So those are a couple of companies I would look at when you kind of look for your first computer.